to be able to say, I know myself enough to know what my giftings are.
Scripture actually wants us to focus on the good gifts that God has given us.
You said, you know that thing that other people do that annoy you? Mm-hmm. That's them living in their strength. Mm-hmm.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Patros Podcast, where we are on a journey embracing healthy masculinity. My name is Allan, Pereira, co-host Jeff Ford. And today we have an incredible guest, an old friend of mine.
Old? You calling him old?
Mm-hmm. I got a lot of graying going on.
A good friend, pastor, counselor, counseling pastor, church member, father, husband.
He's a Patros.
Businessman. He is a Patros. I'm not going to say the Patros because that's Jesus. Mr. Don Rice. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here. We'll see what this conversation brings.
Is this distracting?
I love it. It's hilarious.
It's a little distracting for me.
I thought it might be.
Yeah.
You're giving
You
me
know
like
what's distracting for you?
What's that?
Silence. I read your bio. So did you know that Don is a chocolate snob?
No.
Did you also know that he uses Yetis like I do because he has to keep his beverages hot?
I like my coffee extremely hot.
Same.
Yeah, I know. But like, why?
Because coffee's meant to be hot, not
like
cold.
y'all don't get burned?
Oh, my tongue gets burned sometimes, and I like it.
I slurp it in the perfect temperature with the air to cool it down as it's going in.
So why not get it at that temperature then?
No, because it won't stay at that temperature, and then the next thing you know, it's too cold.
If the Yeti does its job, won't it keep it at that temperature?
No, because you're always going to lose heat, even the best Yeti, over time.
You guys have definitely thought through this.
We have definitely thought through it. Don't
Well,
mess
when
with us.
when you work and you forget your coffee is there and you go back to it and it's cold, that's disgusting.
It's the worst.
It's the worst.
It's the absolute worst. My kids know when we go out the door in the morning, if I'm taking them, we will not get to the first stop sign in our neighborhood before they will say, Dad, do you have your Yeti?
I want a poll right now in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, hot coffee or cold coffee? Like iced coffee?
It's a difference
Or
having
drip.
hot coffee become cold coffee. That's no
But
good.
which one is elite? Iced coffee or hot coffee?
For me, it depends on the time of day.
Oh.
Hot coffee in the morning, cold coffee in the afternoon.
Here's where we differ, Don.
Really?
I'm going
You're
hot all the time. I want hot coffee. If it's 90 in Florida, I want hot coffee. You know what it is? It's the experience for me. The
Brings
experience. The longer that I can elongate that time with my coffee, the better.
You're playing the long game. That's a
playing the long
value of
game.
Man Up and Go.
That's what I'm saying. If I have cold coffee, you
Has to be
can't
a
help
hot
but
day.
drink it down, you know.
What about like on a hot day? It's still going hot coffee.
I mean, if I'm outside, I'm not drinking a coffee. So I'm only going to drink it in the air conditioning. You know as well as I, Starbucks makes it like so cold. So
Yes. Yeah.
even so,
It
right?
feels like winter inside.
Yeah. So
Shout out to the McMillan booth. Starbucks. Every single person in our
I
county
layer
goes through.
when I go in there.
all right. Well, listen, we're getting into it today.
Yeah.
And actually, y'all can probably hear the regulars who listen to the Patros podcast. I'm still a little under the weather, fighting that thing I was last week. So my eyes are puffy, and that's why I had the glasses on. But then Allan made such a big deal out of it, I thought, I'll just wear them then. I'll just keep them on.
I think it's hilarious.
So
Yeah.
I'll just keep them on, and when I, get tired of it.
He just had LASIK.
Yeah, that's what it is. But no, we've got Pastor Don Rice on with us, and you heard his bio earlier, but what he did not tell you is that you are a StrengthsFinder's expert.
Yes, I am.
Yes, sir.
And
He's a guru, some would say.
Yes. And that is very exciting because we recently had Don in with our team. And how awesome was that?
Amazing.
Right?
I've been waiting. I
Glad
told
you
Don,
did.
I ran into Don, was it last night?
Yeah.
And I was like, I've been trying to get you to come to Man Up for like 5 years, 6 years.
You and I met like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It's all timing.
But I was like, yeah, like the providence of God that we didn't bring him in too early, premature. Not that it's ever too early, but you know what I mean? Like where the buy-in is so much deeper because of the complexity of all of our departments now, where there's just so much more of an understanding of the benefits of what strengths can do.
Yeah, for sure. So there are a ton. I mean, I just did a quick search, and there's a whole bunch of, for lack of a better term, personality tests, right? So, right, you've got the DISC and the Myers-Briggs and emotional intelligence. I've taken some other ones along the journey, but the strengths is a little bit different, I think. And for those who don't know what StrengthsFinder is, hopefully most of you do, but my guess is a lot of men listening to this right now have not heard of, or they've heard of it, but they haven't done it. You know, I think there's a good chance of that. And just so you know, Don, the Patros Podcast is really designed to figure out, like, what does healthy masculinity look like, right? And then Patros is Greek for father, and it carries this idea of passing on what we know to the next generation. And I'm just thinking, if my father, if my earthly Patros had known this, I feel like it would have been a game changer for him. Like I was meditating on that earlier. So why strengths?
Well, as you mentioned, there are a lot out there, and I think they all complement each other. DISC is meant for when you are in stress, that you interact in a certain way, whether you're dominant or whether you kind of stabilize. And Myers-Briggs is going to be more of a personality. And strengths has kind of been placed into the personality test, but they don't like to call themselves a personality test because it's really about how you function. It's not who you are. If you looked at this through who you are, it becomes an identity, and you actually can become a little bit of a monster because you're not willing to change because you see it on paper. Whereas if it's a tool that you take and you can change it out for a sledgehammer and put it down and pick up a little tiny tack hammer, it's still the same tool, just used differently, essentially.
Yeah, I think you said that the other day. You said this is not this does not define who you are. It's a tool that you use. You said something to the effect of that.
Yeah, it's to understand how you function. And when I was looking into leadership, I've been fascinated with leadership for 20 years. Being part of the church, I understand that a lot of people, they are trained on preaching, teaching, building churches and such, but they're not usually trained on leadership. And when I was looking at wanting to build the leadership aspect, I was like, why would anyone listen to me? I'm 32, 33 years old at that time, and I didn't think that anyone would care what I brought to the table. And the reality is most people do not care because they care about what they think, not what you think. So I was starting to look for something outside of myself. And when I came across strengths, I honestly just stumbled on it. My dad was seeking a new job, and then someone gave him this assessment, and I read it. And I was like, this is so you. And so then I took it, and I was like, oh my gosh. Like,
This is so
I
me.
would not have been able to explain myself better than this. Because I knew if you asked me about myself, I would have said, I love people. I love to talk. I don't like learning. I don't like going to school, but I go to school to learn, you know, and I have all of these things that I do. But when I did this assessment, I started being able to give the understanding of myself to myself and then to other people. That other person was my wife at first. And when she read my report, she started chuckling. And I was like, what? She's like, is this what you think? Is this how you feel? I was like, yeah, it's like dead on. And that was a moment, a light bulb for both of us to start realizing how different we thought and felt. And it actually changed our life. And I was like, everyone needs this.
Wow.
So then I became on that path to really try to help everyone understand how they function, because we're called in Scripture to steward what God gives us. And I believe that that is also ourselves, the talents that we have. But if you don't know and you can't communicate to others and to yourself what you have, you can't actually steward.
Yeah, and that's something that we've talked about previously on the show. And, growing up in a Christian environment, and I've got a lot of friends like this who are like, KJV people, right? Like, but they're basically like, hey, if it isn't in the Bible, like, that's all we need for truth and godliness. And, the strength isn't in the Bible, right? So like you're a pastor and you're using these. So obviously you're thinking this is a good tool. So biblically, because we want to be, healthy masculinity for us is biblical masculinity. How does this align with Scripture, would you say? What are the things that you see in Scripture that would say, hey, this perfectly aligns with what we see in the Bible?
Yeah, well, we see that God has gifted us the fruit of the Spirit. He's gifted us the various gifts to help the church, and they're labeled differently within Scripture. But when you start looking at strengths, it kind of gives you how within you those fruit shows. So love, joy, peace, patience. I can point to various strengths that accentuate those things. And I can also look at the ones that say, okay, this is the thing that causes me to struggle with that fruit, or those gifts that I think that I might have. So it makes it very clear for me to be able to decipher the gifts that God has equipped me with, but in the language that I understand.
Got it. So the other day when we went through this as a team, we come in, everybody's got and in the next podcast, you're going to want to stay with us because we're actually going to get to the nitty gritty and kind of some application. But in a general sense, we came in and everybody had a lanyard, and those lanyards were different colors. And so I think we had 13, maybe 12, 13, something like that in the room. And everybody had different colors. And the colors are they mean something. What do the colors mean?
So there's 4 colors, and I think you had 16 people there,
16,
so
okay.
it was even more colors. But there's 4 colors. The first one is strategic thinking. This is the first one I'll give. It doesn't mean it's the best one, because it's my lowest.
So clearly not the best.
But green is strategic thinking, which means that you're a starter. You tend to focus on thinking and processing, organizing what the future has. And then purple is actually execution. It's the finishing talents. And a lot of times people have starting talents and not finishing talents, or finishing talents and not starting talents. I actually have more of the finishing execution talents, and my starting talents are lower for me. And I find that is a problem because I have all of these ideas, but I don't know how to get them moving.
And rolling, yeah.
And then influencing is orange or yellow for some people, but I see it as orange. And that is the actually pushing people to get things done. And it's not a selfish, it's not a manipulative thing. It's actually for the betterment of them and the community that they're in. What we find, though, is influencing talents probably cause the most friction.
Yeah.
Because when you move people, there's usually going to be friction. When you use the influencing talents well, there's less friction. So you figure out how to actually not have as much friction. And then the last domain is relationship building. And that's going to be the warm, the welcoming, the come beside, kind of like look out with me, let me guide you there.
That's the blue
kinds of talents. And that's the blue. Yeah.
Okay. And so on our team, we had
a lot of purple.
A lot of purple.
A lot of purple.
Right. So if I remember correctly, we had 3 strategic, which is green. We had 3 blue, which is the relationship. We had 1 orange, who happens to be sitting with me at the table here, all uniquely by himself. And then we had the rest were purple. So I think it was maybe 8 or 9 that were purple.
It was all that one side of the table.
Which means you guys are really good at hiring.
That was total accident. What does it say, though? What does that say about our organization with that kind of breakdown and makeup?
If I had to make a judgment just on the colors and not looking at the talents, I would say that your organization is the organization that gets things done. That things don't just stay on the table and exist, but they will actually get completed and move forward. Now, it'll be done differently, it'll be depending on what talents they have. But having strategic thinking, if you put them in the right place, then they can help start the process, be the 30,000 feet thought process and the careful aspect of the ministry that you have. And then the purple are the ones that get to take that and move forward.
Do you see, I mean, you've worked with, dozens, hundreds of companies. What do you typically see? Is there a pattern, or is there just that everybody is different?
Everyone is different, but what I see is it depends on what company or organization I'm working for. Okay. A lot of times when I'm working with churches, they're more relational.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm
blue.
Which is blue. Yes. When I'm working with like engineers, they're going to be usually more green, actually, which is strategic thinking.
They're analytical.
They're strategic. They're a ranger. Actually, a ranger is going to be executing, but they have these talents that really push forward. So we don't really see necessarily that one comes up more than the other, because they actually did a study with strength-based leadership, and they found more than various talents coming to the top, rising to the top for the leaders. It's how those leaders use those talents.
So it's not about what their color is.
You can have a very successful relational leader, very successful strategic thinking leader or influence. Yeah, it's really that they are self-aware and know how to use the talents that the Lord's given them.
Yeah, that's really interesting, right? Yeah. Because, I immediately think, one has to be better than the other in terms of, who you have as, the executive leadership team, or who you have as your managers, or who you have as, the executive or the administrative side or the finance side or whatever. But you're saying it's actually how you use it. Like any one of those colors can be a good leader. It just is all about harnessing it.
So let's take me. I'm number one includer, which is relational, which is a value giver. I like to have people know that they're important. I like to make sure people don't feel like they're on the outskirts of anything. Yeah. But I'm able to run a company because I draw people in to feel valuable, and then I give them jobs to do. And so then they look to me to do whatever needs to happen, but I draw them in because of my includer and that value giver.
Yeah, well, that's good. Let's get into a couple of the the actual strengths. Okay. Actually, before I go there, I could hear some folks listening in right now, because my guess is we have all different kinds of listeners. Yeah. But many of them are leaders and high capacity guys who want to get better. Who want to grow, and my guess is some of them are like, okay, I'm interested, but like, how do you keep people from going, well, that's just who I am, so you take it or leave it. I'm responsibility. I'm not going to be the one who's going to, how do you overcome that objection? Is that a valid objection? How do you overcome that?
It really is valid, because what I find is when people have just a little bit of the information, people are dangerous in any aspect. Usually the people that know a little bit are the dangerous ones. The people who have learned more understand what they don't know. And so now they're on a journey to figure out what they don't know. Same thing with strengths. When you start understanding that what you thought this meant, and we do this because we think that belief is all faith, but it's actually about standards and values. The definitions of Gallup are different than the Webster dictionary definitions. And when you dive into what it actually means and how it applies to you, you become more aware, more open, and instead of using it as a rubber stamp of who I am, and this is just who I have to be, and you have to treat me accordingly because I'm a maximizer. I don't like to have anything negative pointed out. Oh, you just pointed something negative about me. I don't accept that. You leave.
Then we're like, yo, you didn't do your job, though.
Yeah. It's like, but when you start understanding the nuances of it, the things that it brings to the table, the things that it cannot bring to the table, it actually causes more conversation. And scripturally, we are supposed to be iron that sharpens iron. We're not supposed to live on an island. And so strengths only become powerful when you're interacting with other people. It's not me by myself. So you can try to sharpen them all you want, but you will not sharpen them until you put them against other people.
And you gave us some crazy stats, right? Like in terms of the uniqueness of, can you, what were those stats?
Yeah. So when you look at your top 5 talents, and it's crazy every time I say it, if you look at your top 5 talents and you try to find someone who has the same top 5 in the same order, it would be 1 in 33 million people.
Jeez. Okay. So there'd be 10 of us in the United States.
Yeah, 330 million people in the United States. Yeah, so it's ridiculous when you think how different other people think. Yeah. And one thing I don't think I said in the session with you guys is, have you ever had an opportunity when you're like, what in the world was that person thinking? Or why did they just do that? Yeah. It's because they're doing it through their lenses of life and not through your lens of life. That's good. And when you understand that they see life differently, instead of judging, you ask questions. You come alongside, you try to figure out, and you actually start living life together.
Yeah. So 1 in 33 million. So when you said that, I was like, dang, like I want to go find the other 9.
You can StrengthsFinder.com.
So for me, I literally went into like, I bet you they don't exist. Like,
I'm so unique.
Like, yeah,
there's no one else.
I was legit like 33 is 1 in 33 million is still too much.
I am so unique.
I'm the most unique in the world.
What I do find though is that when people start getting very familiar with their talents, they think they have the best order.
Yeah, of course.
And I actually love that because now they're owning themselves.
Yeah.
And that requires that they have to do it well.
Yeah. So as a shepherd, I can imagine as well, like knowing your sheep, it's so important to understand the lens of life that they have or what their giftings are, because your job as a shepherd is to like equip the saints for the work of the gospel and the work of the kingdom. So I can imagine for you, it's also helpful as the Patros or one of the Patroses here in our church, like to be able to say, I know myself enough to know what my giftings are and how to utilize that for the kingdom in order to shepherd well. Which I can, for men, for any of the guys watching, like that's the goal of Strengths, right? Is for us to be the godly men God has called us to. We therefore have to understand ourselves and how God's wired us.
Well, there's a circle of influence, essentially.
Okay.
And there's, I think, 5 or 6 aspects of it. But the middle circle of influence is actually self. And you can't lead anyone if you can't lead yourself. So you have to learn to lead yourself, to know yourself deeply, and be able to control yourself.
That's good.
And once you control yourself, then the next circle is family. And then you have teams and then community, and it just blossoms out from there. But if you have not learned to control yourself, you can't take people farther than you already are.
That's so good, because that even goes into the qualifications of an elder. Like it specifically discusses self-control and then familial control, and then that is what affects your ability to shepherd. Wow, I like that.
But as a pastor, I love Strengths because I have a lot of people that have taken them around me. Of course, when it becomes the thing that you're about and the thing you love, and I don't love Strengths. Let me clarify this: more than the Bible.
Yeah.
Okay, I do not.
Yeah.
I see it.
Let it be noted in the universe.
But I do love it so very much because it gives me the ability to interact with people in the way that they need to be interacted with. So along 8 years ago, you took the assessment.
Yeah.
And I know how, like, when I see you, I know what your talents are before I even interact with you. And so it helps me interact with you in a way that is beneficial for you, which means that sometimes I have to put aside my interests and my loves for the betterment of you. But there's also people that haven't taken Strengths, and I just happen to have to strength spot, which means that I know how people function. I know how I function. And so then I assume that this might be a need of yours. And so then I start speaking to it. Just like my son who ran into the car and the sisters are coming into the car. And he's like, I win. And his sister's like, it was not a competition. He's like, I know. But if it was, I would have won.
I actually love that. Like I really appreciate that story.
But he's high competition.
Yeah.
And when I'm 34 competition, I don't compete against people. People are not my measuring stick. But with people with high competition, they get better when they compete.
Yeah.
So I have to put him in places that he competes for him to become a better person in whatever he's doing.
That's good.
Yeah. You said something the other day. This was worth, whatever it is we paid you to come in, which is, you said, that thing that other people do that annoy you, that's them living in their strengths, or that might be them living in their strengths. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow,
Allan annoys me all the time.
Drop the mic. Allan is trying to live in his strengths right now. Why am I? No, Allan and I are actually very similar, so we have a lot of crossover. But it's. I just thought that was such a wonderful insight, because now, everyone is quick. We're all quick to judge. I mean, it just happens. And then as Christians, as we grow in our faith, we learn to not say it out loud, but just keep it in. And then as we grow in our faith more, then we learn to go, okay, be gracious, so hopefully there's this maturity as a believer that we continually give people the benefit of the doubt. This is a step for me. Like that what you said the other day was a step for me to go.
It's kind of an aha moment.
Yeah, it's like, man, you know what? That's right. God created them, and they're doing that thing, and that is not. But we need good. That in certain applications where I can't do it. So anyway,
you go from being gracious to valuing and appreciating.
Yeah.
So let me give you an example just to make it real for everyone that's listening.
Yeah. Do y'all want to hear more of that conversation? Well, you can by becoming a Patros subscriber. You'll get exclusive member-only content. Just go to the link in the description or go to the Patros website.
Yeah, and when you become a subscriber, like what you're telling us is that you enjoy this content and you want to hear more of it. So every dollar that you give helps us do just that.
So thank you again for listening as we just together go on this journey of embracing healthy masculinity.